Welcome to Cognitive Rampage podcast. Hope you're taking care of you. Hope you're living your cognitive rampage. I'm trying to find a better crossover between now I have to act like I'm not posting on Facebook Live at the same time that I'm live on the podcast. I got to have like a better segue of like, welcome to the Cognitive Ramp. I got to do something. I don't know, man. But I hope you all are taking care of you out there. The book's out. You know that. I probably talked too much about it anyway, but you can get it on Amazon. Came out a couple weeks ago. A lot of love and everybody, a lot of love to everybody that's been helpful in sharing. Those that bought it, that are reading it, warms my heart, man. It's that you allow my words into your life like that. So it's very personal. I think reading a book is personal to me. So those of you that have bought it and read it, I feel like I know you too. But my guest on the podcast today, I swear I'm still going to say it, Dr. Richard Bartlett. I added the doctor. It's not really a doctor, but there's a D in the middle. So it screws me up. I'm like, Richard D. Oh, Dr. Richard. Okay, Richard Bartlett is on the show today, co-founder of Loomio. And I love how he said it. I wrote it on the thing. A writer of things on the internet. Welcome to the podcast, Richard.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really glad to be here. I do have to clarify, though, there is a Dr. Richard Bartlett if you search on the web, and I think he's a professor of like lizards and geckos. So,
well, if you're
don't ask me any questions about lizards.
Well, if you're studying humanity, man, you're kind of close to it, especially if you're building democracy tools to help out our lizard brains try to work together, man.
Don't get me started on the reptilian overlords, though. That's a whole other show.
Yeah. Somebody commented like, who the fuck is hosting now? Is that Adam Lowry or Alex Jones? What the hell? I'm like, I'm seriously just talking left field, man. I don't believe reptilian people are running our world at all. I don't think. I mean,
I also do not believe in the reptilians.
Right. I was merely speaking to the reptilian brain because jumping in kind of directly to what you're doing. I watched that first video, which I tried to share. I want to share the video itself of you being interviewed, but how you all got started with Occupy on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through this, man. I mean, you know what? I do that. I jump right in. But before I do that, what brought you to be Richard before Occupy, right? What built the man on the way there before you're like, I'm going to Occupy? What was it like, man?
I take it you want a long introduction. Is that right?
That's what I want, brother. Yeah.
All right.
I gotta get to know you. Like, imagine it's a therapist chair, right? And I'm just a dude who's just hanging. We're like, tell me about your childhood.
Yeah. Okay. I can do that because it's context, right?
Right.
So as you can tell from my accent, I was born in New Zealand, and I grew up in a really small, like outside of a small town in the countryside. We were growing vegetables. I had a motorbike and a gun, and a lot of that was a good life. It meant that I had a lot of wide open spaces and freedom, and not such a safe childhood as maybe other urban kids had.
Yeah.
But on the other part of the childhood was I was raised in this quite peculiar and very strict Christian church. And it was sort of like a transplant from, if you imagine transplanting 1950s Holland into a farming town in New Zealand, you get a little taste of this like really prescriptive approach to religion that I was raised in.
That's a change, though. When you're a kid of nature running around, there were times in my childhood where we would just get lost in the orange groves forever and, eat the oranges off the tree. That's how we just hang out. So when you go from that kind of wild, free imagination to now you have to operate within this structure, I'm sure that was probably the first time like, hold on, man.
Yeah. And, I still have a lot of respect for religion. It can do a lot of good for people. But the particular mode that I was raised in just didn't suit my character. I was raised with this understanding that was shared by everyone in my family and everyone in my community and in my school. Everyone all had this understanding that all of the important questions in the world have already been answered, and you just have to align your life to this book that already has all the answers in it. And I really tried, I really tried to get on board with that, because it's nice. It's comforting to think that there's like this coherence to the world, that it all makes sense, and that there's justice and fairness and, mercy and grace and all these nice things. It's nice to like relax into that and be like, there's a creator and he's got my best interest at heart. But I just couldn't. Like, I really gave it my best effort. But the more I, opened up my inquiry to more and more different kinds of people, and the more open I was with my doubts and concerns and so on, the less I could stick around in that community. And eventually they made the decision for me and excommunicated me.
So it was an area like that where they literally choose whether you're allowed to be in the community or not. So it wasn't just like it really was a religious based town. I mean, if the excommunicated you, what year are we in?
Well, I mean, it is peculiar, like I said. I mean, people get, I say I was excommunicated, and sometimes people get the wrong idea. It's like my family and I are still on good terms. It's not like they have completely disowned me.
Good, cool.
But excommunicated in that context means like, it's like an official label, like this guy is not part of our religious community, and it's kind of like a warning sticker,
Yeah, I got you. Okay, yeah.
And actually, in retrospect, I kind of respect it. Like, I'm now involved with setting up communities, and I want to have a boundary on my community and say, if you're showing these behaviors, you're not welcome in this community. So I can appreciate it now.
I saw that the minute you started talking. I said, I see the connection. So democracy, but you spun that in such a different way for yourself personally. Some people could spin that and go, what? Forget the vote and the popular vote of who is allowed to be in a. I should be able to stay, etc. And you kind of turned that and found some good in it, man. You've done a lot of work with it since. With that very basic happening to you, man. That's cool. That's wild.
I can pick up though on the therapist chair, like if you really want to. I just told you the friendly positive story, because that's the stuff that I've already processed and turned into this like, I can share this on the radio.
There's the reframe, right?
But if you want to get into the guts, and into the worms climbing out of my nostrils, there is still a really dark side of that experience, which is that the people who told me that they loved me, and in some respects, it's like I can't doubt that love, that my family and this community around me. They gave me every opportunity. They had my best interests at heart. They were like super, super caring and attentive and all that. It's like really, really good people. And I don't really have a beef with that. But the way that they expressed that love was to tell me that there's only one way to live, and to try and protect me from living the wrong way and then winding up in eternal suffering of hell. So somewhere in my psyche is this idea that love is a constraint. That your job is to stop people from doing certain things if you love them.
Yeah, that's the conflict, right? Because you understand their intentions are based in their belief or framework of what would be good for you, what would save you, and you feel differently. That actually that's more the constraint, and I think that's a battle many people face, man, all across the world, right? Is that pull to one conformity with good intentions, right? Of just get the degree, get a job, pay to your benefits, etc. I think a lot of those are good intentioned in some way, right? But they don't. Oh man, that's a shitty. I hate that connection, right? It's hard because you can't change somebody and their beliefs, right? Especially if their intentions are out of love and their perception of it for yourself, man.
And so, I mean, the way that that's translated in my life as I've matured and gotten my own, foundations and my own character and understanding, is I just have a very high priority on autonomy and agency, and I'm very, very sensitive to any kind of coercion, and that's manifested in the kind of work I'm doing now, which is just like, can we work together when no one is forcing anyone, to do something they don't want to do? That's kind of like the underlying question of my work for the last 6 years now.
What do you think?
We can do better than we usually do.
Well, I figured who else better to ask than someone that's been trying to study that for the last 6 years. And I mean, you literally develop software that helps bring close communities together in certain ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the software is it's really humble, thin, simple, basic, rudimentary software. It's not like some magical machine learning or AI or something that's going to help people overcome their humanity. But it is like a dedicated space where a group of people can come together with the intention of listening and learning from each other and deliberating and growing some shared understanding. And then we have a little bit of, the design of the software pushes people gently in the direction of, it's almost like a game. Can you say something? Can you propose something that you think everyone's going to agree with? So first you have to listen to everyone and understand where they're coming from, and then you put up a proposal and try and solicit their agreement.
Oh, are you asking, or are you just being rhetorical?
Rhetorical.
Okay, yeah.
But then the question of, like, can you actually operate a group in a sustainable fashion without resorting to any coercion? Not quite. Not quite, I think.
So does there always have to be a leader?
Certainly not. And leader is one of those words that
forgive I'm pulling some tyranny of words bullshit. So does there have to be kind of a designer, an implementer of the plan, somebody that's kind of navigating everyone through?
I think there's just, if you think about leaders or leadership, and then you break it out into the different components that you're thinking about, so one of them is, a visionary, someone that's looked into the future and seen something desirable. And then another one is like a communicator, someone who can take that vision and share it in a way that other people understand. And then you've got a motivator, someone who's going to, like, keep people focused on this task and encourage them and support them to, pursue it. You've got all these different attributes of what we call leadership that, in a simplistic way, you can say that's one person and that's the leader and their job is to do that. But in my experience, it's quite possible to share those roles around between people and to take turns. So that's one of the sort of principles of the way that we organize is any position, any role that has some kind of leadership quality to it, we rotate it. People take turns with it. And it's like we might have two people. So at the moment, we've got 3 coordinators in our co-op. And they're playing a coordination function. They know what's going on everywhere, and they listen and they summarize all the information and package it in a way that everyone can understand what's going on at a glance. We have 2 people that are super experienced doing that, and 1 person who's a novice, and they're like running alongside us, learning the ropes. And then one of the experienced people will drop out, and then we'll bring in another novice. And it's like we're just creating opportunities for people to get access to those kind of skills.
Because new exposure to continued patterns allow growth. So if somebody's coming in that hasn't seen it, isn't familiar with the day-to-day, they can then witness the pattern of the experience and say, well, why not do this? We try this.
Yeah, and they bring their own insight into it.
Yeah, wow. So you're almost indirectly. I was going to ask you, what are some of the issues that whether it's personal, family, business, cultural, etc., are people facing with that hierarchical organization?
I think the main, so much of what we discovered. So like I've been on this really intensive tour for the last 3 months now, working with lots of different groups, especially activists, but sort of any group of people that wants to work in an inclusive way. And one of the things that's become really obvious is just how much of a group's ability to work in a collaborative fashion comes down to the individuals in it, and what kind of state they're in, and what kind of competencies they have, and what kind of maturity they have. And if you've got a whole bunch of your members that are deeply traumatized and in shock, it's very difficult to orchestrate that into a collaborative whole that's thriving. But if you've got people that are happy and well, and they're well supported and all that, then they can arrive and be ready to share power with each other and to collaborate. So actually a lot of the work that we've been doing on ourselves with our group has been to do some kind of informal group therapy, to unpick, like, why is it that you're so uptight about this decision? Like, what is it that, what's going on for you here? Because you seem to be blowing it way out of proportion. Is there something that I can, can we get underneath that?
taking it deeper, right? Because a lot of times we have those underlying issues, and you're right. I think a lot of people, again, indirectly pointing out some issues with the hierarchical uh, setup. I always used to have a issue with companies that would have a mission statement preset for those that they hire. And you may be working for somebody, but I used to say if you can tap into the belief of your employer, your partner, who you're working with, and really create a mission statement around why they come to work, why they do what they do, not a corporate set mission like this corporation is on a mission too, rather than sit with the employees, sit with a group of people and say, well, why do you come here? Why do you come here? And try to pull those beliefs together to then form a mission based around the people that are making that organization function. Oh, did I lose you? Oh, we may have lost you there for a minute, man. Yeah, we did. You back in there, man?
I think I'm back.
Oh, that's all right. No worries. I can recap, man. I'm not sure where you lost, but we were talking about walking around the issues of a hierarchical system, be that organization, business, society, and very eloquently, you answered indirectly issues with the hierarchical system by answering why. I love how you put it on your own company too, that you're not afraid to take what you're researching, what you're studying, and applying that to the organization around yourself, and then using what you learn to others and sharing that power, I think, is big. And it brought up what I used to talk about with businesses and how they had a mission statement preset, pre-organized. And why not sit with your employees afterwards and ask them directly, why do you come to work? What's the belief here? And try to organize a mission that's more tapped into the employee's belief rather than the mission to be accomplished by the organizational machine.
Yeah, and when you have a hierarchical system, you've got the boss has got the carrot and the stick. They're like they're going to pay you, or else they're going to fire you. And so those two sort of fences create the boundaries for your behavior. And so you want to get the promotion, and you don't want to lose your job. And so they set the parameters for what kind of stuff you're going to get up to while you're at work. And they use all kinds of status and authority and social grooming and all the rest to get people to all line up. You have a team with 50 people or 1,000 people, and you want them all pointing in the same direction. And we use organizational charts and all sorts of stuff to get people to we're all going in the same direction. So then you have some hippies like us that want to work without the hierarchy. And we don't want to use force. We don't want to use coercion. We don't want to use bribery to get people to, point in the same direction. What options have you got? Like, how can you get people to face in the same direction? And if you're not going to use force, then you immediately get into some really kind of esoteric work, because you're dealing with people's intrinsic motivation. Like, when I arrive in the morning, I get to work and I get to decide what I'm going to do. And if everyone's deciding for themselves what they're going to do, how on earth is that going to be anything more than chaos? And the only way that it can be more than chaos is if you've got some kind of shared context, so you know what everyone else is doing, and you've got a shared purpose, so you've all agreed together, like, this is the thing. Sure, I've got my own, personal axe to grind, but this is the thing that we all care about. And then more than either of these things, I think you need to have deep care for each other. And I actually have to care about what you're doing, and you have to care about what I'm doing, and I have to care about who you are and what you care about. And then once we have that depth of care between us, then our intrinsic motivations actually start to align. And that's so much of the work that we're doing is to get people to care about each other and care about the same stuff, so that when they do arrive at work, with the freedom to do whatever they want, it all adds up to something more than just chaos.
Well, that's beautiful, but it goes completely against all the money-making activities that we know to be in play that speak out, that runs on fear, right? You were talking about the motivation, its walls. It's really based around the fear, right? And after so many years, if you're performing that job, I think, we can play it off, I guess, over years to say that it's not really out of fear, that I'm going here because they'll fire me if I don't. I'm not calling in today. I got to dress like this. That's the one thing that bothers me is, no jeans. There's always some magical thing in jeans. But Friday's okay though. Like you can wear jeans on Friday, but not the other 4 days, right? But it's this fear, right, that pushes you to drive on, like you said. Or I love the titles that they come up with sometimes in some of the firms. Well, you'll now be such and such director. Okay, all right, yeah, just 40 more hours a week is all we need from you.
Yeah,
We'll give you a nickel. But it's hard out there. That's a major paradigm shift in structure to teach people. And how sad, dang, I realize what I'm about to say, to teach people to care about one another and what they're doing, man. Oh.
And you asked, how did I get to Occupy and then onto Loomio and so on? I mean, one of the ways I got there was because it wasn't jeans for me; it was the beard. So I had a job at an engineering firm, and I was doing like satellite networking, like blah blah blah, high tech job. And I did a 3-month trial with them, and then the decision came where they were deciding whether or not they were going to employ me. And they were like, we love your work, you got a great attitude in that, but we are concerned about your beard. And
we're concerned.
We're concerned about this beard. Can you get rid of the beard? And I'm like, I'm not even dealing with clients, like I'm just in the workshop. And so I was like, I'm not actually prepared to shave my face for some arbitrary reason, because it's not so much about my vanity about how great my beard looks. It's about, like, if they're going to ask me to do this pointless thing, it's like, are they just testing my obedience? Because what's going to be next, And so I was like, I'm not up for that. And so then I'm unemployed. And this is where I reveal my extraordinary levels of privilege, because in New Zealand we have a fairly reasonable social welfare state. So that means being unemployed is not the end of the world. And I had some time on my hands to sit on the unemployment benefit and actually contemplate the world and contemplate my role in it. And it was the first time, I was like 22 or 23 or something like that. And it was like basically the first time that I'd actually had time to myself without a parent, a teacher, a boss, a preacher, a professor, someone like that, telling me this is the important thing. This is the goal. This is where you should go, setting up those parameters for me externally. It was the first time I was like in an open plane and just had to decide for myself, what the hell do I want to do?
No noise coming in. Right?
Yeah,
like no noise
exactly.
in the life, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And no, just waking up 8 o'clock in the morning and not having a task, not having a destination. And that's terrifying. It's like the roadrunner that goes off the cliff and then
Right. Yeah. For some people, they get used to it though. It can really cut you so badly that you really just say, I lose all internal motivation for anything, and can really begin to give up. But you seem to take it differently, which is a moment of peace, that quiet you kind of needed without the noise of direction from those in front of us.
I think it took me a long time to get to the peaceful place, but I did keep running once I went off the cliff. And one of the things that I uncovered, when I went looking in my belly button, was, so wait a minute, I'm a musician and I've got all this education in building electronics. Maybe I could build electronics for musicians, and it's like, I've just gone through 4 years of university and I didn't think about that until after I was,
well, they're not programming you to critically think, man. They're programming you to think like this.
They were not. There was never a question like, hey, what are you into?
That should be on the app for every high school, college, right? That should be the first one. So what are you into?
Yeah. So I started making basically weird noise machines.
I saw that. I looked some of those. They look cool as shit, man. I'm like, I don't know what that does. Some of them I do, but I'm like, that's kind of cool, man. And you put that, I was going to bring that up, but you put that together how long?
Well, it was like, I started from just wanting to make stuff for myself, like a real DIY attitude. I play guitar. I want a little guitar amp. And so I made this thing, and then I put it on the internet, and people go, "Wow, that looks cool, man! I want one of those. I want one of those." Like, oh, okay. People are responding positively.
Is that what I sounded like? I hope I didn't sound like that.
No, it was nice. It's encouraging. And so that was sort of, that gave me a hint, a hunch. Like maybe that's something I can do with my life for a while. And so I started. I spent a couple of years producing these weird machines and teaching people about electronics and going to music festivals and doing a build your own synthesizer class in 2 hours, and just like really fun creative stuff like that. And got into sort of started bleeding out from the engineering into the art, and then found myself in this artistic community and going, how did I get here? And the artists,
you're generally the engineering type, right? The mechanic, the put together, the analytical, this works, the very mechanic, and now you've crossed into the abstract.
Yeah. And so the artists that I found myself in, they were interested in this thing called inspiration. And I learned a bit about inspiration, so I had I got myself a workshop, and I just filled it up with inspirational things, like old hi-fi radios and record players and interesting bits of timber and crazy old electronic devices, and just had a space that was full of inspirational things. And I'd go there in the morning and just like have some peace and quiet with my stuff and go, okay, who's talking to me today? Where's the inspiration coming from?
I think that's how a lot of evil villains start their career the same way. Is they start surrounding themselves with all their specialties of the stuff they make, and you walk out of there one day in some storm with some radios, telecommunications superpower or something, man.
And so, as I learned this new competency called inspiration and creativity, I discovered, okay, I can make these cool, weird noise machines, and people enjoy playing with them, and it's like, gives me a good buzz. But then I also felt a kind of a void, like that's not enough. Like, this is cool, but when I look at the world, I don't know if what it needs is like more electronics. I don't know if that's really like the missing ingredient.
So you just kept questioning. So how can I put this together? Was there like I kind of intrigued by the way you said I learned inspiration. A lot of people think it's this thing that just hits them, right? Like this hits me, and I've been hit with inspiration. Can you kind of walk through what it was like, or how you would describe learning what inspiration was?
I think maybe it's better to say I unlearned it. I unlearned all the shit that people told me, and really, really basic example is just my expectations about productivity. Like I from such an early age, you go to school 5 days a week, 9 till 3, and then you get a job, and you've got this like really like a grid. You take this non-linear thing called time, and then you project a grid onto it, and you say, okay, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, that's your productive window, and you should just produce at a linear rate while you're in that box. And then when that time's over, then you can relax and be creative. And when I had the freedom to not have to conform to somebody else's schedule, I realized that my productivity comes and goes in crazy waves, like that. In a good day, I might wake up early and have a pot of coffee and get into the studio and just like produce the most incredible work in like 4 hours, and then have 3 weeks where I'm just like clumsy and useless and can't do anything. And like when I learned that that was just my rhythm, and I would, if I just allowed myself to do it, then everything flowed. It's like, oh, I'm in a down, I'm not really doing anything, I'm not producing at the moment, so I'm going to go to the library and read books or whatever. See, I feel self-conscious though about the extraordinary degree of privilege of being able to just, go exploring in the world, because we have this wonderful thing called socialism in New Zealand.
Well, there's definitely guilt to some of that too, but I think if it can, I mean, they were talking about in the United States 10, 20, 30 years, some set pay that everyone gets every year. I forget what they call it. Whether all that is true or what we got to work for, not what you were saying. I enjoy what you're saying, is the idea of being able to create. I've had that luxury for a little bit, but it's not like it's all VIP and I'm like renting jets, right, and flying. It's not like that, right? I'm a minimalist, so I don't have shit. So I try not to get it confused, right? I think I did a show a while ago talking about how you got to kind of choose a certain lifestyle, I think. So if you choose that a 9-to-5 type, a lot of that becomes centered around what you did that weekend, what you bought that weekend, the next house, the new floors, etc., as kind of like, see what I've been doing, right, as markers, if you will. And on the other side, I think it's a freedom, but it's also, it's kind of cliche to say you're never off work as an entrepreneur. But I think as an innovator or as a creator, as separate words, an entrepreneur, but as an innovator and creator, I think you're never off work because you do just create. And then a lot of times, like you said, you're off work, but you got to be able to sacrifice, I don't know, living with a bunch of stuff in a big 5-bedroom house, or jet setting on the weekend off to some Caribbean island, right? It's an odd life. I don't want to say it's harder, but it's different, especially right when we're raised in, it's structured. Here's the grid. Here's the pattern. No. You have to get up Monday at 6 o'clock and get on the highway with everyone else, right? We get programmed to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have to say though that it hasn't been a sacrifice. Like I've made no compromise for like 7-8 years now. And yeah, I've got no stuff. Yeah, I'm like this close to running out of money, and I'm in a foreign country, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get home. And maybe it would be nice to have more security, but I've got just the most extraordinary, privileged life. You know, like I feel very blessed, and it's by not sacrificing. It's like, nah, you're not having my freedom. I'm having that. That's mine.
All because they asked a man to shave his beard.
Exactly.
You got to take a stand somewhere. I'm sorry, but that's, hey, you take the stand, that's where you take it. But eventually, you know, you took that stand and have experienced a different kind of life and been really doing a lot of giving back with your creations. And that sparked, again, we'll get to it. That sparked from being involved at Occupy, right?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you how I got there, because I still, we're still.
Yeah, imagine that. We're rambling on the Rampage.
Yep. So,
that's
like I said, I'm learning inspiration. I'm producing some like fun machines, but there's I still have a void in my life, what the Christians would call the God-shaped hole. I felt like my meaning was not quite fulfilled yet. And it was partly about this sense of unfair privilege, that I could have this sweet life when there's people around me that are having a terrible life, and going like, wait, what? Why is there so much injustice in the world? And why is it that, looks like the planet's, this close to, well, the planet's going to be fine, but it looks like the human habitat is not so secure. Like, that seems important. Like, why are we not doing more about that? And, I guess what was happening was I was slowly developing a political consciousness, and found myself with these artistic people that some of them had a political consciousness too. And they were not just trying to make pretty interesting creative things, but they were also questioning, like, where did all this injustice come from? And maybe we could imagine like a better, different kind of society. So I found myself in community, and most of them were punks. Most of them were countercultural people that had a very stern critique of the status quo, and a resistance to participating in it, and a desire for a creative alternative. And so in this community, we just started like gathering people. We hosted events. We would have a film screening and a discussion, or we have an art exhibition. You get a lot of different artists together, and you have some kind of topic, and maybe we'll raise money for a charity, or we'll just have a good conversation about what the hell's going on in Palestine. I don't know. Well, how about let's get some people that know about Palestine, and we'll have an exhibition, and we'll learn about it together. So we're doing stuff like that. And at the time, it felt more like creativity than activism. I didn't really acknowledge it as activism. It was just like we were running creative events and building community.
Well, isn't it, once that label gets on something, it has like any other label, right? It comes with its color. If you tell somebody I'm an activist for this or that, it comes with that now. They kind of took that word, man. They gave us some to it, man. It used to mean something, man.
Yeah.
It used to,
So we're doing this creativity buzz, and then, September 2011, I'm on Facebook, and I see Occupy Wall Street, and I see these like weirdos taking over a square in New York City, and they're all like singing Kumbaya and beating the drum, and they've got some funky signs and stuff. And then around that square, you've got the NYPD have set up these like Gestapo spy towers, and it's just like, what the hell's going on here? And so I was watching, just watching through Facebook, like, that's peculiar. And then, whatever it was, 2 weeks later, 600 people are arrested on Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm like, what the? And meanwhile, none of this is being reported in the New Zealand media, and we've got some really great public broadcasting, and there was no mention of 600 people getting arrested on Brooklyn Bridge. I'm like,
yeah, it was
how odd.
it was downplayed. It was pitched as dirty hippies in the way of our traffic and holding up our economy.
Yeah. And so I was really just quite confused about what was happening, but I felt some affinity. Like, these people are dissatisfied with the world, so am I, and these people are creative, and so am I, and they refuse to participate, and so do I. And so then, like a month after it started in Wall Street, there was a global day of action, and that was October 15th. And some people, I don't even know who they were, but they called a occupation they called a gathering in Wellington City, where I'm from. And they just said, okay, on the 15th at noon, we're all going to gather in the Civic Square. And so I went down there going, I went there with this attitude of like, I'm going to observe. I don't identify with those people, but I want to see what's happening firsthand, because I don't trust any journalist to get the story for me. And what I observed was a bunch of people milling around without too much of a clue about what to do, because all we knew about Occupy at the time was that it was leaderless. There's no one in charge. So we're sort of like, this is awkward. What are we waiting for it to start? And then some random person in the crowd said, hey, excuse me, sort of got some attention and said, hey, I just wanted to tell you all. He's like, I don't want to be the leader, but I do want to tell you why I came down here. And I'll just take a minute, and maybe when I'm finished, someone else could tell us why you came here. And that was like a really nice kind of invitation. And so we, this is a big crowd of strangers in the public square. And he shared his story, and he's like, well, frankly, I'm really concerned that the ecosystem is not going to be able to sustain human life for much longer. And that's like the most urgent challenge I can imagine. And we don't seem to be doing much about it at all. So I'm terrified. And I want to know if anyone wants to do something about that with me. And then the next person stood up, and she told a story about how she had lost 2 of her family members to gang violence. And she's like, this is crazy, the shit that's going on, and no one seems to be doing anything about it. And then, the next person and the next person and the next person. And everyone told a story. Like 90% of them were stories of grief, like grief and fear and terror. And like, this shit has got to stop. Enough's enough. We're heading off a cliff. We need to do something. And at that point, I had to go. My grandfather was in the process of dying, which, I called me away, and I had to do the family thing, which I'm really glad I got the chance to do. We had quite an awesome 10 days together saying farewell to him. Yeah. And then when I came out the other side of that, I texted one of my buddies who had been down at Occupy, and I said, hey man, what's going on up there? Because I was out of town. I said, what's going on in the city? And he's like, bro, I've been waiting. I don't want to give you your space, but you really want to get down here as soon as you can, because this shit is incredible. And so I've come back 10 days later, and what I find is like a village had just like grown like mushrooms out of the city square. And there's like a couple hundred people living there. Everyone's like eating 3 square meals a day for free. There's educational workshops happening like back to back to back to back. There's like 4 different, workshop spaces, because there's so much stuff that people want to share with each other. There's like deep discussions, there's media releases, there's like a hospitality crew. It's like this incredible, like a whole village just emerged out of nowhere and was organized without anyone being in charge.
People just doing it. Somebody said, I'm going to go get the water. Somebody said, I got some tents. Somebody brought this, and just really pulling like almost beyond survival mode, but more into we're going to evolve here mode. I think the Wall Street movement, it faced such a hard cognitive dissonance in so many people's lives, because what you experienced by not shaving your beard was enough time to kind of wake up out of the programming and not be in it behaviorally or cognitively or environmentally, and let go of it and kind of see, wait, I didn't get informed. I didn't get an instruction manual. I've just kind of been told this is what we do. And so many people survive that way is they stay plugged in, and they don't want to snap out of either seeing that they're just kind of being programmed on what to do tomorrow, the next day. In Wall Street, or any of the occupiers, if you will, that had anything to do with stopping someone be persistent in that machine or in that daily pattern, if anything, just causes anger. And if anger was a huge response from the Occupy movement for a lot of people in the United States. And for me, anger just means hurt and fear. So if the response is so quick to anger about somebody doing whatever the media was reporting was happening, one, you didn't see it that much as a response when the cops did what they did to those occupying. You did not see an anger response, really. You saw a dismissal. And people were so angry, I think, because being hurt and afraid that maybe these people have it right. How can they just take off work when I have to stay in this? And if these people are right, then the last 10 years or 30 years I've been living my life are completely wrong. And, when they hit people's cognitive dissonance like that, you see where people don't care to even hit people in the street anymore that are protesting. That's how strong a delusion that can be presented in people's lives, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there was anger in the response, but there was also anger in the movement, that the first wave, I think, was all about no. It was all like, we got to stop this. We got to stop that. We got to stop this. This doesn't work. This is, and I feel like that's a necessary stage to go through. So
anger is a great coping skill, brother. Yeah.
You got to get that shit out.
Used right? Heck yeah, we just put it in the wrong places. I agree with you. We can be angry enough to go, this is not going to happen to me again, for sure.
And then there comes the stage where it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's easier to say no, but what are you saying yes to?
Right.
And we spent months, sitting around in circles, deliberating together, what are we going to say yes to? And part of what we were saying yes to was, well, we're going to say yes to this kind of self-managed, self-governed community where everyone has an occupation, regardless of their skills or their experience or their abilities or whatever. We're going to find a way that everyone can contribute meaningfully to this community. That's something we're going to say yes to. And we're going to say yes to everyone getting food and shelter. Like, it's non-negotiable. Everyone gets food and shelter, and it doesn't matter. There's just there's no way that you can not be allowed that. And then we started, going into more difficult, complex challenges about, okay, well, how would you run society? And some of us wrote a manifesto and so on. And it's like, in so many ways, it was so inspirational to see this thing happening. But the camps that weren't crushed by the cops were crushed by this difficulty of trying to make consensus face to face in these long meetings without any training or experience or support, or eventually our camp collapsed. And then you have this very simple narrative about how Occupy came along and failed, and I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Like, the protest movements that have made a difference, I think they take 10, 20, 30 years to propagate. And there's a lot of people.
Sorry, man. Go ahead, brother. Sorry.
Just saying, there's a lot of people that had an experience there that shifted something fundamental for them, and in a way that can't be shifted back. And something shifted for me, and I saw dozens of people in my little circle, and there were hundreds of camps, thousands of camps around the world, and I know that something shifted for all of them too. So I think the fruits are yet to drop from that tree.
Yeah, I think we started measuring movements by how many people showed up. It's odd how we got to that. Everything was how many people came to the presidential inauguration, how many people showed up, how many people were watching the Super Bowl, right? How many people really came, as if it's a correlation to how big a issue it really is. When I know, I'm going to say at least 70 to 80% of the population of the United States is affected some way financially, is burdened or has some loan debt or worried about things like that for me. But I think, can you explain for those from a novice sense that may have been misled on the media idea of what what Occupy was about, what the beginning of the movement was for.
Well, like I said, when I got down there the first day, we didn't really know anything apart from that we didn't want to have a leader. And that kind of gets at the point for me, which is, for me, I'm saying it's not just that there's a bad guy in charge, because we've already seen you can take the best possible candidates and put them in charge and they still don't do shit. And it's not because they're bad people, and no amount of organizing to get rid of the bad guys and put the good guys in is actually going to fix stuff that's a structural issue. And we need structural solutions to structural problems. And the essence of it, I think, was just people reclaiming democracy, as in democracy is something for amateurs. It's something where people should come together and practice making sense of the world and caring for each other. And it's not something that's done by professional decision makers in an institution far away, where we get to vote for, every 3 or 4 years, we get to vote for some representatives. Like, that's not democracy. That's some opinion. That's like a popularity contest or something like that. But that's not the democracy that I demand.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me sometimes about having the whole population vote at once for something scares me as a mass, right? That as a mass, it's rare you see as a species, or at least our species, act in a way, right? There's when a mass of something starts to just believe it, we just roll to it. I mean, I kind of look at what's the number one things on television, kind of, right? Like, I wouldn't watch any of those things to be
Yeah.
serious, but you're like, how many people are watching what? And so I don't know about the masses voting for everything, but then again, who has the competence that's not a subjective level, right, on how it operates? I love the approach of new solutions, of at least saying we need something new. I don't wear labels myself, but I'd call myself a radical, because I don't believe the system in place can be fixed by the system in place. I just don't. And we've turned the leaders into mythical, like Marvel characters, that they're going to come in and do what? Nothing. And it doesn't change. Like, one person's going to make some big difference. I love the structural idea, right? It's the frame of the car is bent, but we keep painting the motherfucker, thinking it's gonna drive better. We'll put a new door on it, then it'll drive better. And there isn't change there. I can see how the philosophy of what you do, or the philosophy really that you're bringing to organizations, to people, even with Loomio, the stuff you're doing, what you write about, what really hit your enthusiasm level. I can see what that was born in, right? I can kind of see how it evolved and said, all right, Occupy was an opportunity for a massive change on a scale level, but so was 69, right? So was 69, which I thought, I did a video once. I was like, the baby, you were so close. I'm like, you were so close. You almost got there, and then you had babies and put on the same damn suits. You know what I mean? That you were fighting, son of a bitch. And you, like you said, you see these movements getting closer and closer, right? And I would incorporate Occupy with 69, right, and 67. These major changes, 68 and on back, because they all do add up, right? They add up over time to a major shift in a cultural thought.
And that's one of the benefits of living in New Zealand as well, and not being so caught up in all of the noise of the United States, is that from that distant perspective, sitting down there at the edge of the Pacific, I can see how that movement is. There's like a movement of movements, and it's not just limited to Occupy. And it's been, I'm super optimistic. I've been sitting there since our camp collapsed at the end of 2011. And then, what do you know? There's this massive student movement in Hungary, and then there's one in Brazil, and Taiwan, and Spain, and it's like rocketing all around the world, and we're all learning from each other. The story from Taiwan is just totally incredible, and it's like every time someone puts a microphone in front of me, I have to tell it, because no one knows about this.
Come on, man, educate.
Okay, so 2014. Couple of years after Occupy Wall Street is out of the headlines, and there's a trade deal being negotiated between Taiwan and mainland China, and it's being done in a particularly undemocratic way. And so some student activists take exception to this, and they go and occupy their parliament building. And they win the support of the citizenry. So there's like hundreds of thousands of people in the street surrounding Parliament.
Wow.
It's like, I think it was 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 people from Taipei were in the street at the time.
Wow.
And they proceed to occupy the building for like 27 days. And what they're doing while they're there is they're not just saying this is a bad trade deal. They're saying this is a bad process. And if we were really a democratic country, this is how we'd negotiate a trade deal. And so they brought all the stakeholders in. You know, they got people from China, they got people from Taiwan, they got people from trade unions, bankers, like all the people that have some expertise on this topic. And they brought them together and they had a public deliberation. And they, you know, broadcast the whole thing and translated it into a bunch of different languages. And they had some just experienced deliberators and facilitators host this thing and say, okay, you know, what kind of trade deal would make sense here? And what they were demonstrating was like, there's a much better approach to making decisions than having these like officials that go into a dark room and come out the other side with a new agreement that privileges the rich at the expense of everyone else. And so eventually the government agreed to stop the trade deal as it was proceeding, and to once they got that agreement, the students left and they cleaned up the building and left it spotless, which I really love.
Yeah, yeah.
And since then, you know, the government has been scrambling to try and catch up to the demands of the people, because there was such a massive movement of people saying, you've lost your credibility. These young folks know how to do it much better than you do. So they've been scrambling. And I guess the long story short is now, 3 years later, every piece of legislation in Taiwan has to go through a public deliberation phase. And so we're talking about, like, last year they did one on Uber, or not just Uber, but ride sharing apps, you know, and like how we're going to regulate these things, because they're a new beast that are messing with legislators all around the world. How are we going to handle this? And they held a process that was a combination of face-to-face meetings and an online part, and they were, you know, going back and forth between the two. And they got thousands of people to participate, like officials and this general manager of Uber, but also regular citizens participating in this process. And eventually they generated 8 policy points, like this and this and this and this, about how we're going to govern these things. And they got at least 80% agreement from people, all the participants. And then they sent that document over to the transport authority and they went, stamp, that's the new law. And so this is now business as usual in Taiwan. And it's because of the occupation. And why did they choose Occupy as a tactic? I mean, because it's like,
yeah, they took it back when the government does have to go. I mean, it just scares me in a population size like ours that the response of the government already is the police department. After the police department, who should just turn around anyway, because they're getting underpaid for doing a shit fucking job they have to do. And they turn around, then the National Guard would come in, then they would have to turn around on the benefits, then the military would be in. I fear that this would be more the response otherwise, right? Instead of this idea of, holy shit, the masses really are here. I'd love, why not a tribal way? I like that idea. Your local community puts together heads that you all vote in, that like a council that actually means something, that's not linked to corporations, not linked to payoffs and nonprofit funds and promises of law changes. I mean, it can't be that hard. Right now, I'm way off. Yeah, right, to start over. I mean, I'm kind of like, right, let's just, everyone on Tuesday, we do this now, right?
Yeah. I think the salient thing about the example in Taiwan was that they did 2 things. One was they built power outside of the institution, but 2, then they came back and negotiated with the institution.
They had a solution before. It's almost, we said, here we go. Here's our solution. Here's our boards of bankers, business owners, or whatever, people involved in all areas. And I like that they showed up with a solution, not just a sign. Yeah,
and they had a kind of mass people power that wasn't sucked into the existing electoral channels. You know, it's like it wasn't one party or another party. It was like this new movement that wasn't already tarred by the corruption of lobbyists and corporate money and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're so polarized, man. That's the issue, right? We get, that's our team, and we no longer, once a person, I think, decides that that's my team, we don't really listen. We just tell the narrative of whatever's been kicked out by that team. And I don't really care whether it's liberal, Democrat, you know, whatever we call it. it's the assigning of a team rather than a solution, right? It's like once you pick the team, I think you've already kind of said your no or yes if you were on the council. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it goes. Instead of people sitting around going, yeah, I'm not a party, and I am open to change my mind, right? Shit, I learned the facts and I changed my mind, right? What would be wrong with that? But I can't because I'm this party affiliated. I'm this title, right? So I can't do that.
Okay, so what's wrong with changing your mind? I mean, I think that's a really important question. And coming back to where we started about the therapy thing, it's like, why are people so reticent to admit that they were wrong and to update their perspective? You know, it's because they're like terrified about how they're going to lose their identity if they're revealed to be a fraud, or like you're a hollow man, you don't actually know what you think. Like, we have to address that at a very, very deep root, I think. You know, that people can feel like it's okay to just have half the story, and then I'm going to learn the rest of the story from you. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I was trained to always have all the answers and to always put the best image forward and to look like I'm the guy that knows all the answers. And it just doesn't set you up well for actually doing the democracy thing.
Right. The whole image of what's the go-getter in the United States kind of presents against that, right? You don't see a lot of humility, right? In the idea of going, oh, I do think like that. Oh, I did say that. I did. Oh, I wonder why I think like that. Could it be my own bias? It's the difficulty, right? To question self, to question the process. We're such a species of pattern, right? But people get comfortable, or I think almost complacent in the idea that this is my grid, and Richard, I want to stay within my grid. This is what works. This what doesn't work, and are sometimes afraid to push it because, right? Let's say, what's life without what we have, right? There's the fear that people would keep in. Okay, if you don't like what we have, even though it's the best, period, right, as they would say, what else is there, right? There's nothing else better. They've tried it for so many years, but what a downplay on our freaking potential, right? It's like this is all we know, so this is the best it gets.
And there's got to be a dimension as well, which is just like, you know, people always want to say, I know what's up, and I'm confident, and, you know, I'm the man. And why do you do that? Because you want to get paid. And why do you want to get paid? Because otherwise you're not going to eat and you're going to be out in the street. And so you've got this like very real threat just sitting there in the corner growling at you, saying, you better show up and know what you're talking about every day, because otherwise you're going to be out there and you're going to be a loser. You know,
back to the fear, right?
People need to be in some kind of supportive community before they're going to show their vulnerability to say, actually, I don't totally know. I've got some ideas, I've got some inspiration, but I need to hear from yours, and I'm just a little piece of this.
Yeah, the giving the self up in a comfortable place to do so, right? To trust somebody. That's what I was trying to build with that Tribe of Change on the Facebook. It's really kind of grown to that too. Is you see more and more people being vulnerable on videos, like I was hoping people would start doing, and it's a good place to start, right? But we've been talking a lot actually last couple of weeks on there about connection and social connection and open to others' perception. If you can take that same person, you were actually hitting on the idea and ask them, is there a truth in the world other than the scientific stuff we can prove? Is there truth in the world? And they may tell you, well, no, right? It's the perception of a person. But if they even know that, and then you ask them to question their own truth, their own belief of what is, and automatically, no, this is right. This perception is, no, you can't have your own perception or view of it. This is mine, even though in an out of context conversation, like, yeah, it's all perception and opinion.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at with the like the fear of being out on the street. Like, there is an economic dimension to this that and so for me, the cure is to actually start practicing a collective kind of economics, like a mutual aid, where you're not just sharing your feelings and your ideas, but you're also sharing the rent and sharing the food, and showing people, demonstrating, hey, look, we got you. Like, you can relax a little bit because we got you. And I really think there's a therapy that comes from that when people get to share just the material stuff, of eating together and having a house that's shared. Like right now I'm in somebody else's house and it's a shared house, and they're like, yeah, of course you can come and stay for a few days while you're in town. And it's like, there's something deeply therapeutic about knowing that someone's got my back, someone that's like a friend of a friend of a friend,
Yeah, I think we like doing that. I love inviting friends over for dinner, right, and sharing the food. I think that's so common in almost every culture across the world. I hate saying every, but to share food at a table with people, I think doing that is something. But right, here's what America's going to say, right? Well, the competition. We need the competition to further our whatever we're doing here. But I do find that I do create better when it's not a force, when it's not a pressure, right? If you don't have to go do something, right? If you enjoy what you're doing and to share those things, it's very Venus project, right? I mean, I guess we gotta at least bring up the beautiful thing going on there. But
Yeah.
it's such a paradigm shift, man.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I've noticed on this trip while I'm away from my hometown. One of the aspects that I took for granted about New Zealand is that it's just totally commonplace for young adults. So from the time you leave your family home to go to university to the time that you get married and have kids. So there's usually like 5 or 10 years in there. We all live in shared housing, and that's just the normal thing. And back home, I live with 6 people in this big old house, and no one's in charge of the house. We do it together. We pool our money. We pay the bills. We eat together. Like that's just normal. We don't even. It's not even something that you talk about. It's just like that's how people live there, and that's not really how they do things here. And it's not how they do things in Korea either, where I was last time. And it's like it gives you a different set of expectations, I think, compared to if you're all about like looking after you and yours, like maybe your parents will look after you, or else it's just on you. If you don't have that good fortune, it's just on you, and you've got to hustle and hustle and hustle. And to have like a small crew that are actually looking after you, I think it really shifts something deep.
Yeah, it speaks to the power of the social connection, and to go beyond the social connection, to be less vague. The social sharing, I think, is a whole paradigm shift new for people to think about. Even though I know a lot of people listen and share with their immediate family, friends, right? We share food all the time. You need to borrow this. We give rides, right? We all tend to share that way, but I think it's a fear. Maybe it boils down to the half of the human race that believes that everybody else is out to get there, so I got to get mine. And the other half that's going, I'll share mine with you, man. It's cool, right? And that fear, and it seems fear driven, man.
And my I guess my strategy, if there is one, is just to like try and increase my sharing. Like can I share more with these people, or can I share with more people? And keep pushing until it's uncomfortable, and then push it a bit more. And that's the recipe I know, and it's serving me so far.
It seems like that's the drive behind Loomio is you're almost doing the same thing you did back when you took your engineering and applied it to the instruments in some creative idea. Is you're taking that very powerful mechanistic brain of yours and engineering brain of how machines and things work, and your experiences of what you've been in, saying, okay, we can bring some mechanical organizational way to this, so this can function and be replicated different times, and the way you shift out people for growth and change. I'm gonna say, man, you're a heck of a lifestyle or a culture engineer, man.
Well, that's the thing. Like I don't do much of the product engineering. Like we've got awesome people working on that stuff, and I can just get out of the way and let them do it. But my focus has been largely on the culture engineering. So like how are we gonna work together in a way that works for everyone. And
do you see the people as the parts in the machine? Why an engineer may see the nut and bolt, I think you see the people and what they bring as parts in the machine.
I guess I try to go beyond the machine, like
Okay.
it's more about it's a posture, it's like it's like where maybe the machine is like a windsurfer, and it's like we want to angle ourselves in the right way to catch the breeze, and that just means like it's not so much focused on the outcome that we're like scooting towards. It's more like, are we doing now well? Is now good? And we're just like keep orienting ourselves to now, and like how's people going? And it's like, if I look around the team right now, there's some shit going on, and we need to focus on that and straighten that out again. And it's like just this continuous job of identifying like where's the tension and how we're gonna unravel that and sweeten it up again, so that we can get back into that easy flowing posture.
Yeah, I think machine probably, I would say an ever growing machine that kind of is built also to kind of grow itself, right? That is in a constant state of growth because of the way it's built, and the way it shares and the way it leaves no person without the basics too. I think a lot, I'm going to bring up Maslow is that idea of those basic needs. When those are met, I'm going to lean a little bit toward his research as kind of being there. When those first ideas, when the shelter, when the safety, when the food, when these hierarchies are met, I think people really can be kind. They can be sharing, right? You can move to those levels. May not the idea of self-actualization, but maybe social actualization can
Mhm.
happen on that level when, if enough people, are, well, at least with majority, have food, shelter, water, safety. Perhaps a global or a social self-actual or a social actualization possibly could happen, man.
Yeah, and I'm optimistic that it is happening, and it's just it it doesn't. It's not so. We don't hear about it much, and it's not just like it's easy to say, the media, the bad people, and they're out to get us, and blah blah blah. It's not quite that. I think like when I was in Occupy, we had some reporters come down, and they we just didn't fit into their story. They just couldn't. They just couldn't see what was going on. They're like, okay, who's the spokesperson? I'm like, no spokesperson. You're gonna have to talk to a lot of people and get different perspectives, and just not try and summarize it. Just say, look, there's a lot of different shit going on.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. Like, there is no one thing that you can grab onto. And like our storytelling apparatus and our sense making apparatus is tuned for an out of date reality. And there is a new reality that's emerging, but it's really hard to see it, and it's really hard to name it and to point to it because we haven't experienced it yet, most of us. Like all these experiences don't have language yet. So how am I supposed to get on the news and tell you, hey, look, this is the new paradigm. It's just come out today. Like you can't broadcast that shit. It has to transmit like person to person in a rubbing off of culture between us.
Well, you can be my spokesperson, man. You're rampaging off right there, man. That's that. I love it when we get to that part, man. That was, yeah, you kind of flow stated rampage there for a minute, man. Uh, what do you see on an immediate future change, maybe? If you could go in with the magic wand, right, and wake up tomorrow, right? You do something, you make a wish, you wake up the next day. What will have happened for you? Or yeah, just for you, for the world, whatever. A miracle happens and you go to sleep and wake up tomorrow. What would that be, man?
I came to the United States uh, looking for reasons to be optimistic, and I haven't found many, to be honest. Like there's a few. I met some small communities that are doing some real work. They're feeding each other, and they are looking after the material needs of people that have been on the receiving end of terrible violence from the state. And those people, they made me optimistic, but they're a tiny, tiny minority. I have not got a ready, I feel like I'm quite a creative person, and I can spin an optimistic story out of a complex situation, and I'm having a difficult time doing that here. And yesterday I read this speech from a Native American elder from way back in the 80s, and he's talking about Marxism and how it's not the revolution for him and da da da. And one of his points he made was just like, look, if you're going to live out of harmony with nature, eventually nature's going to bring you back into harmony one way or the other. And like, I don't want to wish, I don't want to wish that on people because that's going to involve just a huge amount of loss. But it's really hard for me to see another way that this is going to play out apart from a severe collapse of civilization in this part of the world. And I'm just hopeful that between South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, there's going to be some other like flourishing developments. But honestly, man, I do not have a sweet story to tell you about this country yet.
Yeah. So if you did though, if you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened, brother, what's the one miracle if it came true for you overnight, what would that be, man?
I would probably just start with the like what is our capacity? What's my sphere of influence? That's like, it's not about the government or the media or whatever. It's like, look, this person's in need, I'm going to help them. And, you know, like I'm in San Francisco, and it's crazy to walk around the streets and see how many people don't have homes, and then to walk into this building and it's like, I'm in the most beautiful place, you know. And it's like, if we had a critical mass of people that woke up and said, you know what, I'm not going to wait for anyone else, I'm gonna help this guy who's had a rough life and give him a place to eat and a place to stay, maybe that would make a difference. I don't know. But I'm always focused on, like, what is it that I can do with my two hands and my creative energy.
I will take away from that, man. I actually like that. If you could wake up, I'll take the miracles. We all woke up with the frame of mind of what can I do to help somebody else. I think that would be a massive change. All right, so if I get 3 wishes, I'm gonna call you to make one of my wishes, at least so I don't mess up. That's a good wish, man. It's well thought out, man. I like that. I like that, man. I appreciate you coming on, Richard. Is there anything we didn't cover? Anything you want to talk about that we didn't hit? Anything about Loomio or anything? Just open mic to you, man. Whatever you want to hit.
I mean, there's so much to say, right? Like, we barely touched on Loomio or what it does, or I didn't even mention the word Enspiral, which is this community of 250 people now that are practicing a non-hierarchical way of working around the world. And like, there's a lot of stuff. But I do have somewhere to be. That's the issue.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, man. Because you can come back on anytime, man. You want to book it? We can definitely talk more about it. It's Enspiral, right?
Yeah, that's Enspiral, like encouragement, you know. Enspiral.
I like it. Enspiral. I looked that up actually before. I was reading some of the articles on there. A lot of talk about some non-hierarchical communities and what to do and what to try. That's innovative to me. So it may not be recognized now, but the tribes that are doing that and experimenting with that may have a massive effect in the next 100, 200 years of or sooner of how we start to live and are maybe forced to live, whether our decision or not, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be real. This version's not working so well, so maybe it's time for a reboot.
Yeah,
no disrespect. No disrespect.
No, I think a lot of people are. I mean, look, the idea of a prepper was nothing, you know, and now it's a thing, you know. So people are digging holes and building it with steel reinforcements. I mean, whether we're paranoid or really preparing, right? Shit, these things didn't exist, but.
I'll tell you my prepping. I've been prepping for 8 years now, and it comes down to this. Number 1, invest in the common good. Number 2, learn how to work together. And if you do that, like, yeah, okay, the state collapses, yeah, the economy collapses, but you got some skills and you got some shared resources. That's my prep.
Yeah, I'm in. So Richard for not our leader. All right. Man, I appreciate the love and sharing, man, the experience and talking about yourself too, man. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the invitation, man. Keep up the good work.
Oh, we're trying, man. We have our moments, but you can come back anytime, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Peace.
Later.